The Champions League is back, and with it always come a huge range of questions for all of the clubs involved. One of the main clubs that have questions to answer is Arsenal. They weren't even in the Champions League last season and came second in the league, and they'll want to really build on that and hopefully win some silverware this year. Can they win the Premier League title? Can they win the Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup? Who knows? I mean, looking at the Premier League right now, I see City, Spurs, Liverpool, and Arsenal all having not lost a game, and Brighton only losing one. It's going to be tight. So I look into what Mikel Arteta's potential problems are, his potential solutions, and where that ultimately puts Arsenal for the end of the season. First up, in terms of Mikel Arteta's issues, is before the season they had a real lack of squad depth. It was a fairly thin side. It was when you went behind the first team, you went from a club that could win competitions to a club that could sort of compete mid-table in the Premier League, probably. Could be harsh on some of the players at that level, but it's really hard to say where they come in. In addition to that, and arguably deepening that issue that they didn't have last season but will this year, is the international issue. AFCON is coming this winter, as is the Asia Cup. That'll take Tomiyasu out. That'll take Thomas Partey out. I can't remember who else they've got in the squad that would need to go away. Mohamed El Neni as well. He's less of a vital part, but those three could play a fundamental part in a decent squad that can play a hell of a lot of games this season. It's a really, really long year. 38 Premier League matches, at least 6 in the Champions League, and then more in the Europa League if they can't get through the group stage. FA Cup and League Cup as well. Could be up to 60 matches, maybe more. It's difficult. In addition to that, there is minimal UCL experience in the squad that they had going into this summer. Martinelli hasn't really played in the Champions League. Saka hasn't really played in the Champions League. Ramsdale hasn't. There's a hell of a lot of players in that squad that haven't played top-tier European football, and that isn't necessarily good for a side that wants to win everything they can. In addition to that, they were unable to sign a number 9 this summer. I don't know whether that was by design or not, but they're sort of lacking up top. I do like Eddie Nketiah, but I'll get into that in a little bit more detail later on, and I'll see whether or not that is an issue. So it comes to finding the perfect solutions as Mikel Arteta, and that isn't easy to do. The first thing that they did, which is an incredible shout, is strengthening the squad during the summer. Declan Rice solves a couple of the earlier problems immediately. Signing Declan Rice gives you a defensive midfielder to cover for Thomas Partey, and it gives you more depth, and it's a player that has played at the top level. He's not played in the Champions League before, but he's played in the European final, and he's played against France at the World Cup. Declan Rice has a hell of a lot of top-tier experience, and having him on board is perfect, especially considering he's a fairly young player. Add to that Jurrien Timber, in spite of his injuries. Add to that Kai Havertz, who's won the Champions League and scored the winning goal in a final before. Great recruitment has definitely helped. And in addition to that, there is more of a focus on rotation at the moment. We saw last weekend David Raya came in instead of Aaron Ramsdale, and that isn't normal for any Premier League club. But it could be now. It could be an idea of, let's make sure that all of our goalkeepers have minutes in their legs. Everyone can be called up on at a moment's notice. So you've not got a clear first keeper, second keeper. You're going into every single clash with a first team squad because everyone has a good amount of football behind them. That rotation is especially important when you consider Jorginho, a Ballon d'Or winner, isn't a first teamer at the moment. When you consider the fact that you've got Gabriel Jesus to return from injury. I'm just going to bring up a list of the others because I'm sure I've forgotten someone. There we go. David Raya has not played much. Trossard is the key rotational player. Emil Smith-Rowe as well, Fabio Vieira, they're all incredible players that are going to get a lot of minutes throughout the season. We've just not seen them yet because it's been one match per week. Now we're going to get a lot more. We'll see a lot more rotation from Mikel Arteta, and that could bring out the real quality throughout the squad. On the number 9 issue, enter Eddie Nketiah. I've seen a lot of this guy. I have been interested in him since he was at Leeds United in our promotion season. And whilst we only had him till Christmas, he showed a lot of promise, and I think that promise is potentially coming out now he's got a good run of games. He's the sort of player that needs to play football consistently to see the results. He's not necessarily a pure poacher, he's not necessarily a playmaker either. He's still developing into what he can be, but I think Eddie Nketiah is a strong number 9, at the very least, on the rotational level of Smith-Rowe and Vieira. Arsenal didn't need to sign a number 9, they just needed to not ignore the ones they had, like Balogun and Nketiah. Gabriel Jesus still has to come back. He can play as a 9, but it all plays into the idea of flexible football that Mikel Arteta really likes. His front line is very dynamic. It's mobile. Jesus wasn't a pure number 9 when he was playing. He was quite injured a lot of last season. I've got hiccups in the middle of a recording. That's not good, but I will push through. He was fairly rotational in the early points of last season. He'd drift out to the wings. He'd let Odegaard push up a little bit higher, and I think that is going to be key against all of the sides that they play against this season. It means that you can pick more players. Everyone can rotate a little bit more. You can manage minutes, and it's going to be good. At the end of the day, what do I think is going to happen with Arsenal's fight for titles? Premier League, I don't see Manchester City slipping up again. I know it's easy to say that, and you say it every single season. And the top of the league is incredibly tight at the moment. There are 5 teams within 3 points of each other at the top of the division. It's insane. But I see Arsenal giving a little bit of a threat, maybe to the Premier League title, but definitely securing the Champions League. Not the competition itself, qualification. The Champions League itself is going to be an insane challenge for Arsenal at the moment. If they were to win European silverware, it'd probably be the Europa League if they dropped out of the group stage, but I don't see that happening. I can see a quarter-final, maybe a push semi-final run happening, but it's hard to say. FA Cup and League Cup, it's always impossible to make a good guess, but I can see a push for either of those competitions if Arteta decides to properly dedicate himself to them. If not, you can always over-rotate and you risk going out early, but it doesn't really matter too much. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below and drop a like and subscribe. See you later.